All right, everyone, welcome back for our last session of the day. And so I have to say, what a fantastic lineup of demos we've had so far. We've really covered payment solutions, ERP, payroll, compliance, spend management, really essential building blocks for any modern finance team. But now, to close us out, I'm really thrilled to have both Luke and Mach, so CEO and CFO at Flinder. So they'll be really helping bring all of this together again with insights on how do you really build high-performing tech stack, like whether it's 2025 and beyond. So yes, such experts here. Really, when it comes to Flinder, they're providing outsourced finance function support for tech and scale-up businesses. They get to see what good looks like all the time. So it's really going to be wonderful to have you take us home after we've seen these demos and now start to think about how do we build that great tech stack. Now, just before I hand the mic over to you, reminder to anyone that might be joining us for the first time, we've got the chat in place, so you'll see the CFO Connect team that you know and love who will be in there. You can also use it to say hi. And when it comes to questions, head on over to the Q&A. That just helps our speakers see much more easily where the questions are. And you will also see a few polls coming your way as we go along. So with that, I'll pass the mic over to Mach and Luke.
Excellent. Cheers, Michelle. Thank you very much. And good, well, evening or afternoon, depending where you are in the world watching this today. So, yeah, thank you for having us. Michelle's built us up nicely as well. Hopefully we can add some value here and perhaps bring all these demos that you've had together today. So why are we here talking? A little bit kind of about us and Flinder just to kick us off. So I'm Luke Streeter, I'm the CEO of Flinder, and I have actually on the call with me, who is our tech and SaaS sector lead. Sorry, I think Macha, you're on the slides for me, aren't you? If you could flip to the next one, please. So just a little bit about Flinder. So Flinder, we provide outsourced finance services for tech and scale-up businesses. I won't go into too much sort of detail on it here, and happy to follow up if people are interested to learn a little bit more after. But most importantly, why are we here? Why are we talking to you about this today? So as Michelle said, we see what good looks like across a number of clients, across a large range portfolio of clients, and lucky enough to work with some very fast-growing scale-up businesses. So what we want to cover off today is a little bit around the tech landscape and overview. I'll touch back on some of the top CFO Connect tools that was in the recent report. We'll then look at how you can roll out a robust tech stack, so a little bit around building and implementing. Before I hand over to Mache, who will then take us through some essential soft skills, we'll look a little bit around automation and AI, and then talk about hopefully some key takeaways from the session today. Excellent. So if we start off with the overview. So hopefully people are familiar. I was lucky to be involved in the CFO tools report for 2024. We've actually had some presentations for some of the top apps today. So I know NetSuite had a demo earlier today as well. So in the cloud accounting space, NetSuite were kind of the leader in that place. Of course, you've got likes of Xero. It's probably a common transition that people grow from Xero to a NetSuite. Some of the tools and apps we'll talk around integrate kind of nicely around Xero and that app space as well. ERP system, NetSuite came out winner on both as well. So absolutely, you would have heard of those already as well. One of the things in the tech space at the moment, FP&A is one of those ones that's become quite crowded. Anaplan and Pigment actually came out at the top two tools at 15% each. There's other smaller players like the Fathom, the Causals. You've got Sift, you've got Spotlights. There's kind of multiple of these tools out there. They all have their pros and cons, and an element of it is kind of first use, what you're used to using. So I'd always recommend people sort of test, play. You can always get free trials for these sort of tools as well. In the spend management, naturally Spendesk was kind of winning that. That was the most commonly voted for in the spend management space. Lots of, again, some sort of challenges. You've even got the likes of the Revolut, the Airwallexes that are helping with virtual cards these days as well. So you've got some sort of very quick, easy before you need to cycle for more scale. So there's lots of sort of different options in that space as well. When you get into the billing and accounts receivable space, we heard from Stripe today. Everyone kind of probably heard of it and knows of Stripe already. Equally, how you make collections easy of cash coming in, certainly for subscription-based businesses, is so important. So you've got the likes of Charge being go cardless. Adfin's an interesting new player that we've seen recently as well. kind of challenging kind of that market there as well. There's always sort of new entrants into the space as well. Procurement space, Cledra is the leader there, that we've seen. It's a new category for the CFO Connect report last year, but it's great to see them there and how that can help organize your SaaS spend. And then in the payroll and HR space, you've got the likes of Personio, which was the leading app. Deel, we heard from earlier today as well, helps with employer of records. And then in HR management space, HiBob's quite a common one we come across. Employment Hero, there's lots of others there. What I'm kind of getting at here, there's a lot of apps, there's lots of players. So being parts of these sort of communities, asking peers, asking people what they've used and how they can support is really important. And I just recommend sort of testing these different apps. I skipped reporting intelligence actually. You've got the likes of Power BI, Tableau. One of the things I find in this space is that sometimes you get a bit of an over-reliance on skills and knowledge. If you've got someone from FP&A perspective in the house, they may have their tool of preference. How you use these tools, how you bring the data in. One of the key things we'll talk about shortly is around the use of APIs and the connectivity. What key apps are you using that need to go into your reporting tool is always kind of a must for me. And it'd be a miss not to talk about AI tools. So at this point, I want to get a bit of engagement actually. So we've got a couple of polls that we'll run. So we'll talk about AI and automation a little bit more shortly. But if we could launch the first poll, please, that should ask you, how often do you use AI tools in your current role? So if we could launch that and then see what the responses are. I think both of the polls may come live at the same time. So if you go for both of them, the second question we've got in there as well, for those that are using AI, what tasks do you use it for typically? It is single select on the second one, so we've got multiple or all as an option at the bottom as well. So just give another sort of 10 seconds or so to get some more answers in for that. So on the first one, pretty spread across them all. 30% of people at the moment have said daily, 20% weekly, 30% occasionally. I won't steal too much from what Mach will cover, but the rate of AI development is astonishing at the moment. I'd say if you're not using it, and I think a few people haven't explored it yet, absolutely, I think you'll start to get behind the curve of AI. AI is being built in. I know from some of the demos earlier, we saw AI built into NetSuite as an example already. Either you need to be adopting it within existing tools you're using, or you need to be deciding what your AI roadmap and what your AI plan is as well. Otherwise, from a finance perspective, you will start to get left behind. On the second question, I think it's because I've not voted myself. On the second question, it's kind of a mix. So we've got sort of an even spread between content creation, finance processes, bookkeeping, data analytics, decision support and research, and people using it for all. So one of the things I wanted to do here is just highlight the variety of use cases. I think sort of take this back 12 months ago, it was typically content marketing creation. But it just shows that people are using it for finance processes. RPA has been around for a while, but we're starting to see kind of month-end automation around things like prepayments, etc. as well. So the use cases of AI, just in the short space of time since it's been a bit of a buzz, has kind of massively grown as well. So just to touch on some of the trends before kind of moving to the next part. Cloud-based and API-driven, what I'm kind of getting at there as well is the tech stack you're using. It's important that it is cloud-based, it's API-driven because it gives you that scalability, talking to other systems. So that enhanced integration allows you to facilitate the integration between your different systems so that those data sets are all coming together. And also the agility that it gives you as well. So if the infrastructure is in the cloud, naturally it gives you more agility to connect the systems together as well. Naturally seeing the focus on real-time and data analytics, hopefully fairly self-explanatory, but that informed decision-making is powering you as CFOs to make that rapid decision-making. Gone are the days where you get a report sort of 15, 20 days after the month end and then make decisions. By then it's too late to react and make decisions to it. You need to be getting that real-time data and information. And absolutely, security and compliance. Working in finance is an absolute kind of must on security and compliance. So you need to be considering where your data's going. Just imagine if there have been data leaks, but imagine if you had the data leak, the reputation risk and impact that would have on your business as well. So whilst it's great that people are embracing technology and using AI tools, you need to be considering the risk perspective of it as well. Excellent. So if we talk a little bit around building a robust tech stack, and then we'll come on to some tips around kind of implementing as well. Naturally, with any sort of tech implementation, you need to consider the size of the project. You can sort of tailor some of the bits I'm talking around here, whether it's a very rapid implementation versus a fundamental large change. So if you're changing your ERP system, that's sort of very different to if you're going to roll out a new expenses platform, as an example. But the key bits to talk around here when you're building out a robust tech stack is looking around the scalability. So going through change is always difficult. So ensure that the tech stack can grow with your company as well. So be looking at least that sort of 12, 18 months ahead. Sometimes from a cost perspective, it may be that you do change systems twice in that sort of period of time because you're just not at the scale yet to go to that kind of end position. But to have that blueprint and roadmap is important of where you're going with your technology stack. Seamless integration. So touched on a couple of bits of this already, but prioritizing APIs and real-time data flows as well. For me, when I'm looking at systems, if it's not cloud-based, if it's not got open APIs, we tend to not consider it because we can't get talking to other systems. So that seamless integration is really important when you're building that tech stack. Security and compliance, absolute non-negotiable, as I note there as well, and touched on that one before. User experience, so yeah, make sure it's intuitive for the teams to be using. At the end of the day, adoption will give you a good return on investment. There's no point having a tool that's not used by the business if it's not going to be adopted, and quite often if the usability of it isn't there. So you make sure you're testing apps before you kind of diving into them and getting feedback from the team. What's easy use to you in finance might not be easy use to the wider business in operations. And lastly, business case wise, of course, consider the value versus complexity. I sometimes take the 80-20 approach with these sort of things, that if you try and fill that remaining sort of 20% of your use case and what you need, perhaps you're overcomplicating what the process. So sometimes simplicity is a way forward, and just making sure that it's providing that measurable value that you need, and you're not over engineering your solutions. So next, just wanted to talk a little bit around the implementation strategy. So this is a sort of methodology I would follow, whether it's a very rapid implementation of a system to something a lot larger scale, just the level of detail you go into each step. It's just at a high level, mapping out the current processes to understand before you build anything is important. Make sure you're then defining the key requirements that are needed so the objectives are clear. Pilot, test, validate before full rollout. Sometimes that could be a very quick validation. Then implement and train before you then monitor and optimize the system. So it should be a circular loop. Once you've implemented the system, there could be different modules, there could be improvements be made. So to dive into these in a little bit more detail. So when we are mapping out the current processes and understand it before you build, it's important that you're identifying the existing workflows. And of course, when you're putting new systems in, if there's manual processes, what's inefficient, what's redundant processes, that's the idea, of course, of implementing new technology. You want to move your processes forward. So understanding what gaps you're trying to address or what challenges you're trying to address is super important. And ensure you're engaging key stakeholders across various departments as well. To bring this to life, we've had a poor experience when we changed our practice management system internally, that we didn't engage the management team at the right time. They felt sort of blindsided. They felt like they weren't involved in the decision. Therefore, the adoption of the system wasn't as good as what it could have been for us as a business. And that sort of adoption and return on investment just took a little bit longer. So actually, we learned from that is bringing the management team into the decision making earlier on. And whilst it might not change the outcome of the system we implemented, it certainly would have got different buy-in from the business. On the second one here, define in key requirements. So prioritize the must-haves versus nice-to-haves as well. So this links back to that sort of 80-20, avoid getting over complex just for the sort of niche use cases that you might have in a piece of technology. And ensure it's aligning with your long-term strategy as well. And touched on this a few times, but consider the integration capabilities as well. Whilst that might be standalone, very good use case, if it can't talk to any of your other systems, is it going to create manual processes elsewhere? And therefore those efficiency gains are going to be kind of negated. Next up, we talk about pilot and test. So validating before you do roll out. So here it's important to look at a selection of, is it going to be super users? Is it going to be key users across the business that you want to trial the tool? Measure the impact and efficiency of it and user adoption. So it's taking that feedback from them, understanding how you can roll the tool out efficiently. And then identify any unaddressed challenges. So actually by getting in testing, some of those some gaps may become clear as you're going through that testing phase, some bits that you didn't consider in your first two stages. Implement and train. So absolutely we need to ensure adoption, and just by rolling out a new sort of shiny tool, it doesn't mean people are going to use it. You need to train them properly on it. So consider phased implementation. So reduce risk. Perhaps there's different modules you want to roll out if it's kind of an ERP system, for example, or perhaps there's smaller user groups on a smaller system implementation that you might want to roll out in phases. Ensure that you've got comprehensive training and ring fencing resource to do this as well is really important. And if people have got their day-to-day roles and jobs, then actually that normally takes priority. So you'll find that unless you have the right resources to help teams adjust, the implementation is not going to be a success. And finally, monitor and optimize. So this is around the continuous improvement of that app as well. So what metrics, what were you expecting it to address? How do you measure what the time savings are? How do you measure what errors are? How do you reduce errors as people adopt the tools? So gather sort of ongoing feedback. How do you get that open culture of what's working well, what isn't? And then ensure you're regularly reviewing your tech stack. And we talked about the rapid change in AI. It's the same across all the categories. Apps are very regularly sort of new releases, new updates, new functionality. So once you've implemented it, are you adopting the new functionality that these softwares are releasing as well? A couple of bonus sort of bits that I put on here is around change management. So yeah, often in finance we might underestimate the resistance to new tools. People, creature of habits, they get used to the tools they're using, so don't underestimate the importance of change management. And then return on investment measurement as well. So set KPIs up front to track the gains you're expecting, as well, to ensure that you do get the value that you're expecting.
Look, we have a questions. Would you like to answer this now, or shall we leave for later?
Yeah, if you think they're relevant, we could answer it now.
Yeah, so the question is, in all your conversation with CFOs and finance teams about tool implementation, what's the most common mistake you've seen? Any tips to avoid them?
Yeah, so I'd say it's probably the underestimation of the impact on the business that I touched on. I think we've, at Flinder, to be open, we've learned that firsthand, not only in tools we implement for ourselves, but also tools that we're implementing for clients. So in a simpler scenario, some of the apps that we might roll out for a client might be very obvious and might be kind of easy implementation, but the impact for operations in finance, we use these systems day in, day out. And therefore the impact it has on the wider business. So I think we sometimes forget the operational teams might not be perhaps as tech savvy, or they might be a little bit less open to change and efficiency gains. So yeah, I'd say that's the one I've most commonly come across is where you're not allowing the importance of change management, or allowing the team the right time to train to adopt the new pieces of technology.
Okay. Right. I think that there are no more questions at the moment.
No. Cool. Cheers, Matcha.
Right. Thank you, Luke. So I slightly changed the order. So I thought talking about AI and automation makes more sense than starting with the soft skills. So when you when we look at the evolutions of the software in general, not only finance and accounting software, but in general, we can see two big shifts recently that's been happening. The first one is RPA, which Luke mentioned. It's which stands for robotic process automation, and actually it's been for a while now. I remember when I spoke to Xero about 10 years ago, one of the selling point to me was that Xero can do bank reconciliation much faster than Sage, which was the software we use, which I thought was a strange selling point, but nonetheless they thought about the RPA probably as the main feature of Xero then. But it's been for a while, right? About 8 years. And if you think about the finance teams, what were they doing about 15, 20, maybe 25 years ago? Spending countless of hours on manually processing invoices, doing reconciliations and generating reports, apparently most of it on paper or in Excel. Then you probably are puzzled, right? Because these days, RPA or automation in general is pretty much everywhere. You can open Xero or any other accounting system and generate a financial report within seconds, right? Without thinking about actually how to do it. And it's been estimated by some sources that RPA, or some sort of it, can handle up to, or actually handles up to 80% of all routine tasks that we do. And it's not just in the finance and accounting software, right, like Xero or others, but when you look at Zapier or IFTT, which was one of the pioneers of RPAs, if this, done that, maybe they changed their name recently, then RPA is pretty much everywhere and built into every software. Even Microsoft Office, or Microsoft in general, has an RPA tool, which is called Power Automate, where you can build sophisticated workflows and categorize data, respond to emails, and whatever you can imagine. And it's pretty much for free, or at least the basic features. So it's everywhere. And it started like as an efficiency tool, but it's not anymore an efficiency as its main benefits. But the main reason why we're using, or at least we try to use, is freeing time for the more valuable stuff, the 20%, if you look at the Pareto principle, which may be strategic analysis or decision-making support or whatnot. And that leads us to a second shift, which I noticed, and it's AI. AI is pretty much everywhere. If you think of it, it's a buzzword these days, but the main probably feature or the main use that I can see developing now is AI forecasting. So traditionally, when I did, or pretty much everyone did forecasting, they use historical internal data, maybe some external sources as well, and did some simple trend analysis, and that was forecasting. These days, software like Mosaic, DataRace, Planeful, or OneStream, just to name the few, can do much more than that. They can link internal and external sources, do at the moment maybe simple, but analyze macro signals and do some even sentiment analysis to deliver better forecast revenue and cash flow forecast. So this is the trend I can see expanding all the time. And when you think about the emerging application like intelligent document processing, right? What I mean by that is taking a contract, scanning it for the instead of going through hundreds or tens of pages, it scans automatically. It can extract the data you really need, and it can even provide a revenue recognition treatment for you. That sounds like far-fetched, but I know there are some vendors actually playing with this. Or if you think about the automating compliance monitoring, that's also a huge thing, especially for the auditors. And there are obviously, so in the short term, actually, the main issue I can see with the AI is there is a lack of the real life applications. So lots of people come up with lots of ideas, but for AI, but especially for ChatGPT type LLMs. But these are like fancy and maybe interesting, but still fancy and pretty much useless use cases. But in the short term, probably the biggest issue that the whole industry faces is the how to creatively use AI for more serious work. And obviously around AI, there are some concerns that Luke already mentioned around privacy and security. So whatever you feed into ChatGPT, you don't really know what happens with the data. And it may use for their own purpose, just for training or maybe for something else. But I would be very careful with that, just mindful of the time. And that brings us, it's a nice engagement tool. So we have some fancy charts around that, but how to use these tools, or who uses them for what. But the most interesting for me was the use of FPA software, which I recently saw in a CFO, the SaaS CFO report. So apparently 68% of users still use spreadsheet for FP&A. So they don't use AI augmented, so to say, software, still spreadsheet rules, which is a big miss, to be honest. And that brings us to the soft skills. So I would probably 5 most soft skills that are still, well, that will be used in finance. So number 1, that would be communication, influencing and persuasion, emotional intelligence, and change management that Luke mentioned as well. I put active listening as the last one, but that will be part of the communication. And communication, we are accountants or finance people as general, very analytical, so we miss the communication a lot. So we cannot translate the numbers into insights, at least most of that, or some. So I would focus, what I notice is the focus on communication usually pays off quite well, especially when you have a board meeting and you need to explain a few ideas behind why your revenue is not going to the plan. So working on communication and influence really helps. And financial storytelling, which is part of it. So I would recommend pretty much everyone. I have no affiliation whatsoever, but this book by Matthew Dix, Story Worthy, is a really great book that you can use and improve your communication. So I'm still learning, as you can say, not fully mastered, but it's a great book that can expand your communication skills. And change management is also important, I would say, especially when you try to implement all these tools. And from my experience, usually there is either hesitance to implement these tools or resistance. So people they feel that once implemented, they either become redundant at some point because the software can do pretty much 80% or maybe even more of the usual task, or once the efficiency is gained, there will be more task or more work to do, and they try to avoid it. So explaining this, that's not actually what's going to happen, and you free your time for the more interesting stuff, and automating the boring stuff actually helps. So I can see Michelle is showing.
I know it's never a good thing when I'm popping in. No, it's so interesting. We are going to be at time exactly. I think that we're on the last slide, so I'll let you wrap it up. We do have a few questions. We won't be able to get to them, but let me pass the mic to you to wrap it up, and then I'll take us home.
No, actually, that's it. So I'm keen on listening to these questions and reading and trying to answer at least some of them. So yeah, let's
perhaps
start.
with the Michelle, I don't know if you can see who the questions were from, but I guess if this could be circulated, our details could be circulated, we're happy for people to reach out directly and ask us some of these sort of questions as well. So appreciate I spoke for too long, I didn't leave enough time for the questions.
No worries, you guys are great. No, and I think that's a perfect segue. So, we've really, first of all, Luke, Mach, extremely insightful. I think it makes a huge difference to hear about subjects, scalability, integration, AI from the people that are working with companies daily on how to do this right. And again, I know from chatting with you guys that this is really a bird's eye view that you've shown us. And so for those that want to go deeper, interested in understanding more, obviously, about Flinder and how to possibly work with them, Luke has launched the poll. So you can put your hand up so that you can continue the conversation with the team. And we'll pass on that info so that Luke and Mach can be in touch. So with that, a big thank you. This is the close of our Demo Day Best of Tools. We know that most of you can't always sit through every session. We've had 5 of them today, not a problem. We've, of course, recorded them. We'll be sharing out those recordings with you in just a couple of days. A huge thank you to Stripe, NetSuite, Deel, and Spendesk for their demos. And then, of course, to the team at Flinder for bringing this all together. So huge thank you, and to those of us who have been joining. So with that, have a great evening and have a great early afternoon for those on the East Coast.